You're listening to The Coffee Hour. I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
You're like eyebrows really high, really excited. Always
It's
when it
music.
involves music, and particularly church music.
Yes.
Always
Choral
excited
music.
about that. It's like...
It's one of my favorite things. It's on the list.
I hadn't noticed. I don't think our listeners had noticed yet either. If you started listening yesterday.
Yeah, maybe.
We're excited because we get to talk about the Kantorei of Concordia Theological Seminary, Fort Wayne today. So very excited about that. Thanks to Concordia University, Wisconsin for supporting the Coffee Hour. Find out more about Concordia University, Wisconsin at cuw.edu.
Live uncommon.
Joining us in studio today, Kevin Hildebrand and Matt Machemer, who have been regular guests on the Coffee Hour when we get to talk about hymnody, but today we get to talk about the Kantorei. So thank you so much for being here today, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
You're very welcome.
Well, I suppose we've talked about more than just hymnody and hymns and stuff. We've talked about some of the workshops and opportunities to learn at the seminary as well, but excited to talk about the Kantorei. So what is the Kantorei of Concordia Theological Seminary? Who should we start with?
Well, I'll pick that up. Well,
Okay.
the Kantorei it's a men's choir that serves both the seminary and the church at large. It represents the seminary through the worship services that it sings at. We go out on the road like we are this weekend, sort of invading the St. Louis area for a couple days, and sharing a little bit of what the seminary life is like and what these men are learning about and what they're singing about as they confess the faith in their song. It's sometimes easier for us to go on the road and take the seminary to people out on the road because not everyone can come and visit us. And so we spend a couple times a year taking these tours. We also have a number of recordings we've done over the decades, really. And it's really, I think that summary of being able to represent the seminary and what we do best is confess the faith in what we sing, and to do that in a number of venues, either in our home, Kramer Chapel, or out on the road or through recordings. That's what we're about, and it's a teaching method of helping form these men who will be our future pastors.
You mentioned formation. What role does a choral group like this in the experience of choir tours and taking this music into different parishes around the country? How does that serve in the pastoral formation?
Well, I'll take this one. I think that a group like this plays a huge role in pastoral formation for a lot of these men. The seminary is a wonderful place, and there is no substitute for being on campus, being in class, and learning. But a tour is a great opportunity, and that's something that these guys do a lot of. This choir is often on the road, and it gives us a chance to interact with people all over the country, people who are in parishes all over the country. A lot of them have wonderful places of worship and opportunities that way, and these guys get a chance to interact with those folks on a very down-to-earth level. And in addition, the choral program at the seminary, both the Kantorei and the wider choral program, I think does a wonderful job of forming these guys in the liturgy and worship of the church, which is a huge part of what their ministry will be. So the Kantorei specifically, I think, gets to see how that worship service takes form in these various parishes throughout the country when we're on the road. And then, after church is over, they have the opportunity oftentimes to stay overnight with members of the church and interact with them on a more personal level and get to know them and their stories. All of which is excellent preparation for a pastor as he prepares to serve his people in a myriad of ways in his parish.
Mm-hmm. How does that then affect or benefit, I guess is a better word, a seminarian, the positive light, benefit the seminarians as they go out on vicarage and then eventually graduate and are ordained and into the parish? How does that choral tradition and being immersed in church music, how does that benefit them down the road then when they're in their pastoral vocation?
Well, one of the things that we have a couple courses at the seminary where we teach about church music and theology, and I think one of the great things about the Lutheran tradition of church music is it both has a rich tradition and an ongoing tradition of congregational singing, as well as music that needs to be sung or played by musicians who rehearse in advance, namely choirs. And in this setting, they get to see this not just talked about, but in action. These men are actually doing it. They're putting into practice what they're hearing about, what we're modeling or instructing in class. And then part of the objective of the courses is how do we make this applicable to each particular place where I might find myself. And I think that is part of the benefit of the choral experience for these men of the Kantorei. They're able to now say, well, this is what I could do in my parish. Maybe not exactly the same thing, and that's one of the reasons why there is so much variety in the choices that could be made for Lutheran worship, for the congregation and for the choir and for instruments, that they see modeled this variety of what can be done now in my future parish.
What are some of the things that, as a musician, as a church musician, that you love that you get to do with the Kantorei?
Well, I think one of the best things is this choral group. They have a high level of commitment. For instance, they're always required to be at rehearsal. This is an audition group. We have some groups where we just get as many volunteers as we can, and we love that. This I can pretty much count on every week. I'm going to have those 14 guys here, and so it's a different way of we can rely on their attendance. Mm-hmm. And since I'm auditioning them, I know I can count on their voices and I have the right balance, and it helps us do a different level of repertoire than another choir could do. It's not necessarily better or superior, but it's just different based on the different forces that you have. So that's one positive thing. I think going out on the road and seeing various churches, for instance, Matt Machemer sees a wide variety of instruments, which there can be some fun things. He could probably speak to that a little bit better.
Yeah, I love tour for that reason. In a typical, say, 5 or 6 day tour, I have the opportunity to play 5 or 6 different types of organs or even pianos and things too. And the first few years that we were doing this, it could become a little nerve-wracking because it would just be like, oh, you have 30 minutes and then we'll practice with the choir, and it's like, okay. And now it's kind of fun. It's like a puzzle. It's like a game, trying to figure out the best things for this instrument and how we can make it sound the best for the service later in the day. But it's a lot of fun to do that personally. And then I think it's a privilege to be traveling around with this group, with these men who are preparing to serve the church in this way. But also, I think a big part of that is, again, like Kantor Hildebrand was saying, giving them the opportunity to see a variety of situations. And it's, I have played some very, very large, grandiose type organs. I've played some very small, lovely instruments also. And even with that aspect of being on tour, there's a lot to see and a lot to demonstrate. And you can do a lot, and you don't have to have a $3 million organ sitting in your balcony to do it. And I think it's good for those guys to see that too, and to share that with the people in the various churches that we visit.
Yeah, and we've talked about the benefits of the Kantorei to the men who are in the Kantorei. What is the flip side of that? The benefits of the Kantorei to the rest of the church body as they go out. What is that? How does the Kantorei serve the church at large as they go out on tour and produce these recordings and those things?
Well, I always pray that the words that we sing and the melodies that we sing would be a blessing to those who hear it. And that's part and parcel of the music of the church, that it is comforting because of the gospel that we are singing. It is comforting because of the message of hope and reconciliation that we have in Christ, new life in our baptism, and all those all those aspects that the music and the hymnody of the church gets to sing about and confess. That's always my prayer, that this would be a comfort and a reassurance and a strong confession of what it means to be part of God's family for everyone who hears us. And whether that's here on tours when they come to hear us live, or in recordings, or on nice radio stations like this too. So that's my prayer for those who hear us.
Every weekday morning at 7:15.
It's true.
You hear the creed from Kantorei at the beginning of Oratio.
Yeah.
One of the unique things about a choir like this or an ensemble like this is that it's not the same group forever. So the voices that make up the Kantorei, we have wonderful recordings that are a part of our library here, but those recordings are different groups that happen. It's still the Kantorei. But talk a little bit about the uniqueness of an ever-changing ensemble like that.
Yeah, that's, I think, anyone in a
and we have just about a minute. Sorry. It's a challenge, but I think as a conductor, you know the sound that you want, and then you have to communicate to the singers how to shape the sound, what to do with the vowels, what to do with the phrasing, so that you have some kind of uniformity. You're finding that sound that you want, and you're helping to mold and create that. And that's part of, I think, the audition process. Is you're listening for what kind of blend are we going to have, and are the singers open to receiving that kind of instruction and adapting, and so that we put our stamp of what kind of sound that you want. Is the Kantor Machemer, that's sort of a philosophy that
I would
put together.
I would say so, and I think now I don't conduct the Kantorei. I come as the accompanist, but I do conduct several other choirs on campus, and I have a pretty similar philosophy there. And I also think it's important too. Every year, like you had said, Andy, every year the membership of our congregation changes at the seminary, if you view it maybe that way. And so you're always working with different voices. And a lot of these men, and deaconess students too, women, come from all over the place and have done all sorts of different things. And they have, everyone vocally is kind of unique in that way too. So you're trying to mold the sound, you're trying to create a sound that's pleasing, and I think every good musician has an idea in their minds of what that would be. But I think you also look at what you have and you think to yourself, what is the best sound for these guys? Is this a really deep, rich choir? Is this a brighter sounding choir this year? And it doesn't mean that you give into everything that they do without ever directing them. But you also look at the individual voices and you work within those parameters to get the best sound out of those guys that you can.
The only place you get the inside scoop on the Kantorei, the coffee hour on KFUO. Thank you so much, Kantors, for being our guests here on the coffee hour this morning. Kantor Kevin Hildebrand, Kantor Matt Machemer, thank you so much for being our guest on the coffee hour.
Thanks for having us. Yeah, great to be here.
I'm Andy Bates.
I'm Sarah Golseth.
The Coffee Hour with Andy and Sarah is a production of KFUO. To support the Coffee Hour and KFUO Radio, visit kfuo.org. You can also text KFUO to 41444 or send an email to gifts@kfuo.org. And you can call us at 800-844-0524. KFUO. Christ for you, anytime, anywhere.